Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Eleanor and today I want to talk to you about rereading books. Now, I know this is quite a heavily debated topic sometimes. Some people are very much against rereading books because they constantly want to be reading new releases and their TBR is so huge that they just don't have time to go back to reread old favourites. They're just constantly reading books that they haven't read before, which I greatly admire. And then on the other hand, you have people who love rereading and probably reread more than they should and don't get to all the books on their TBR because they're constantly reading books that they love. And I happen to fall into the latter category. I love rereading old favourites. I don't see it any different. Like, you would rewatch a TV show, you would rewatch a film that you love, sometimes multiple times, up to dozens if it's a very clear favourite. So I don't see the reason why you shouldn't reread books, because it's still a form of entertainment, it's still a form of media, and I just love doing it. It's much more time consuming and it's frustrating when you have a pile of books that you haven't read before, and I still go and reread a series that I read before. If you'll have seen last week, I posted my February wrap up and I reread a whole trilogy in that I've read probably twice before. So some people would say that's a waste of my time, but I love going back to visit stories that I've fallen in love with. I just find such a connection with it. I always get more out of it. I connect more with the characters. I see more things if the plot's more complicated. Like, there's always things that you miss on a first read because you're so focused on like the very surface level plot, the initial big main event of the book. But on subsequent rereads, you see more subtle things. You see more intricacies of characters, and if the plot is more complicated, you see all the foreshadowing, which I greatly enjoy going back and seeing all that again, knowing what the end result is. I just have so much fun doing that. So I just wanted to talk about a couple of my favourite books that I've reread, and but not ones I've mentioned recently in other videos because I've talked about them a fair few times already recently. And yeah, just start a conversation in the comments about people who love to reread and what books you always come back to. I just find a great comfort in going back to a story that I've read multiple times. Like Harry Potter, I could not tell you how many times I've read this series from start to finish. Probably the first 3 or 4 books I've read a dozen times or more. And the latter books I have read significantly less, but I've still reread this series an awful lot and listened to audiobooks an awful lot. And I don't get sick of the story. It's coming back home. It's returning to a world I love and I'm so familiar with, and it's just a great comfort to me. When I'm in a reading slump and I don't know what to pick up next, or there's I really have this hankering to read and this just a big passion to read, but I don't have a clue what to read, I reread an old favourite and it really ignites my passion for reading again, especially when I'm struggling with what to pick up next. So Harry Potter is one that I reread an awful lot. Another book I've reread, not as much as Harry Potter, because this would be quite the undertaking, is The Lord of the Rings. I have a fair few up here, and I've not read a lot of Tolkien's other books. I've read The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit and The Silmarillion, and I have a few other of his books that I haven't gotten to yet, because they're very dense and you really have to be in the right frame of mind to sit down and read. But I have read Lord of the Rings a few times and it's just such a wonderful story. It's so complicated, it's so deep, there's so much complexities to this series that reading it once does it no justice. You have to read it multiple times to really get the true value of it. Another series I've read a few times is His Dark Materials trilogy. I love this series. I've read it maybe 3 times now. Once I listened to an audiobook, and I recently reread them a year or 2 ago, and then I've just now, at the end of last year, watched the TV series adaptation, which was fantastic. I love this series. I read it first when I was quite young, and I got a lot of it. I read this first when I was very young and got a lot out of it, but it wasn't until I read it when I was in my later teens that I saw how much more darker and gritty and how deep this series is and what its actual message is. And I only understood that when I was older and had read it before and kind of knew what was going on and could like focus deeper into the story. So this is another series I've reread a few times and have loved. Again, at every rereading. Another series I've reread is, I think it's called the Pellinor Chronicles, like the first book of Pellinor. This is the first one, The Gift by Alison Croggon, and it's a series of 4 books. This is the series I first read when I was maybe 12, and I absolutely fell in love. And I've reread the 4 books in this series maybe 4 or 5 times since my first reading, and I love this series. It's just set in ancient times, it's got magic, it's got horseback, it's got swordplay. It's just such a fun adventure, and the characters are really well written. It's just fantastic. I love this story, even though it's for young adult, it's for younger readers. I happily have reread this as I've gotten older and have still deeply loved this, and I really am up for another rereading because there was a prequel book that came out, one of the characters from when he was younger, and there's like his kind of origin story type book came out, but obviously I outgrew all this and I didn't keep track of it, and it's only in the last year or so that I realised there was a prequel. So I'm actually really looking forward to maybe rereading this sometime soon and reading the prequel book that I didn't get a chance to read years and years ago when I first read this and fell in love with this series. But yeah, this is another 4 book series that I absolutely love and will always return to, and it will be one of my childhood favourites. Another book I've read multiple times is Little Women by Louisa Alcott. Now this edition is beautiful, and I've reread this book several times. I first read this maybe in my early teens, mid-teens, and it was my first like classic that I absolutely fell in love with and adored. I'm not very much into like Jane Austen and all of that because they're very like romance heavy, and that's not really something I enjoy, especially in a classical setting. That's 2 genres I don't really read very much and don't get a lot of enjoyment out of. But Little Women I loved. I loved this so much. The 4 sisters were just fantastic. They all had such striking personalities. They were all going different ways in the world, and it was just a beautiful story about them growing in their sisterhood. So I reread this several times. This isn't the edition that I've read multiple times because it's beautiful. I've got a little old battered copy that is well loved. But yeah, this is a book I absolutely loved. And last on this list, but by no means least, is A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness. Now this initially was a trilogy, and Deborah Harkness has now started releasing more books in kind of continuation, and I haven't read the 4th book yet. It's on my list. I hope to get to it very, very soon. I've been putting it off. I don't know why. I don't know. Sometimes there's just a block when it comes to reading a next book in the series. You really want to read it, but also don't want to read it on a balance, and it's bizarre. But I really need to force myself to get to it because I will love it and it'll be great. But this trilogy I have read multiple times, and this first book I've probably read 4 times at least. I first read this again when I was in my early teens, mid-teens, and I loved it. I just loved the story, and it's written by an actual historian who lectures in America, so her recounts of like historical settings, everything's very accurate. Obviously she's twisted it to fit her supernatural, fantastical setting, but everything's very well done. It's handled with care because she's a real historian, so she's not just a writer looking things up online. She's studied this for her whole life, and it's just handled with such care. And the story's so interesting. It's got vampires, it's got magic, it's got demons, it's quite political, it's about a love story, it's about time travel. This trilogy is just fantastic, and yeah, I've reread it a few times now, and they're quite big books, so it's quite an undertaking to reread them. Now that was just a few of books that I love and I've reread. I couldn't possibly go over every book I've reread and will reread because there's far too many to count, because that's something I love to do, is reread. It would be interesting actually to maybe check and see how many books from 2019 were rereads for me and weren't books that I encountered for the first time. That would be an interesting number to know. I might do that at some point. But yeah, let me know what you think of this discussion. Do you reread books, or do you prefer reading something once? Do you worry about going back to reread something and not liking it as much as you did the first time? Yeah, let me know. and I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. But yeah, that's it. Be sure to like and comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.